Everybody, get ready for this video.
Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. You matter. You matter. And I am fighting for you. And I will not stop. I will not stop today. I will not stop tomorrow.
Please stop.
You are loved. You matter. You belong here.
I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to stop this. I swear to you, I thought this was a deep fake. I read the article in the news. Stop. We don't need to see that again. I read the article in the news. I saw the video, and I still thought it was a deep fake. And I went to it's a real senator. Her name is Michaela Kavanaugh, not to be confused with Brett Kavanaugh. This video makes Alex Stein, Primetime 99, Pimp on a Blimp, look like a rank amateur, sir. I'll tell you that. It's crazy. I mean, it's crazy. It's unhinged, and there's no other way to say it. So I went to her Twitter feed, and I saw other stuff. I saw this video. She looks,
I'm standing up against hate, and you're standing side by side, shoulder to shoulder with hate. I'm standing up.
It's unhinged. There is no other way to say it. Unhinged. And I just asked, are you gonna tweet this video here? No words. And I don't even care. She could be fighting for the most righteous cause on earth. If I'm on the side of that she's fighting for, I'm still asking her to sit this one out, wait on the sidelines, and please just stop, because you're making us all look ridiculous. Some people were rightly, observing that this type of it's like North Korean crying so hard because you have to cry so hard. Everybody knows you're fake crying, but you got to cry hard to show your loyalty to Kim Jong-un. It's that type of public display of absurdity. Everyone knows it's absurd, but you do it. And the harder you feign it, the more ridiculous it is, even though everybody knows, the more points you get with the regime. It's a cult, and that's how it works. Now, speaking of which, people, if last week was an interesting week for interviews, so too will be next week. Yeonmi Park, the North Korean defector, she's coming on Thursday. I'm pretty sure it's at 1 o'clock. It's Thursday. It's either 11 or 1. It's 1 o'clock. It's going to be an amazing interview. So Thursday, keep that in mind. Yeonmi Park. I'll send out the links beforehand. Friday, Solomon Anderson, Zachariah Anderson's brother, the man who, whether or not you think he might have been guilty of something, the process has failed in the conviction of Zachariah Anderson. His brother's going to come on Friday, and we're going to talk about that. So we've got an amazingly interesting week coming up next week. I got some more videos to play on the intro, but just before we get started, I should make sure that we're good everywhere. We're simultaneously streaming on Rumble. We are. Let's see if we're simultaneously streaming on Locals. We are. We always ask Barnes what are the books over his shoulder every week. We're going to do a little bit. I got some fan mail or some sub mail, and I want to thank them. I got a book from Ashley Malley, A Bush or a Tree, What Do You See? Ashley, if you're watching right now, I came into my office room, and my kid, my youngest, is sitting there reading this book to himself. And I'm not saying that for any other reason than it actually happened. And I'm like, good for you, dude. You weren't reading at the beginning of the year. Now you're reading to yourself. So thank you for that. I got that in the mail. I got another good book in the mail. Cities on a Hill, 21 Isolated Months with the Elderly During COVID. Do I have a note in here from whoever sent it? To Viva, thanks for all that you do, Josh. Check this book out, people. Original print, Finn. And it's a book of all of the beautiful fish. What's amazing, first thing I noticed, I go to the back, an ad for Marlboro. Check that out, people. That's quite funny. And then, Steve Gosney, the death penalty lawyer, sent me a couple of his books. So now I just have to, the kids' book I read already. The fishing book I perused, and now I just have to read the other two books. Everybody, how's everybody doing? It's going to be an amazing show tonight because we got a lot to talk about. But before Robert gets here, I sent him the link. He's got the link. I have a few videos on the lineup. We're going to talk about RFK Jr. I don't call it a debate. It was an interview with Krystal Ball. If you haven't seen it, Krystal Ball Turning Point, I think is the name of the show with the other guy. His name is Saged. I forget his name now. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be disrespectful. It's worth watching the interview. Nobody's going to be able to listen to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And say he's not eloquent, he's not thoughtful, whether or not you're pulling a Michael Tracy and you can't stand his voice, or want to pick on his voice. It doesn't matter. Substance over form every day of the week. And if you want to talk about ableism, even commenting on RFK Jr.'s issues, which from what I understood, I thought might have actually been the result of a jibby jab injury. Nobody's going to listen to RFK Jr. express himself and think that he's anything but eloquent and thoughtful in substance and in form. And there's no doubt Democrats are not going to allow a debate, because I actually think RFK Jr. would beat Trump, if there were a judged debate. It doesn't mean that I think policy-wise I agree with RFK Jr. over Trump, and probably not. But the man speaks well. The man speaks thoughtfully. And there's a snowball's chance in hell that the Democrats are going to let RFK Jr. debate Joe Biden, who can't string a sentence together, even by the admission of that guy in there, Joe Walsh. Sure, he's old. Sure, he needs a nap every 20 minutes. Sure, he can't string 8 sentences together, but it's him or Trump. But the interview is amazing. And I want to play a couple of highlights from the breaking points, not turning points. So I'll play this. It's just an interesting phraseology. RFK Jr. recently came out and said he would never join a ticket with Trump. Just, to dispel all those rumors, he'll never join a ticket with Trump. That may or may not be true. That doesn't mean he wouldn't join an administration with Trump. But he says that now anyhow. See how bad the DNC screws him hard, because he doesn't look like he's going to pull a Bernie and just lick the boot and endorse the candidate that just cheated him out of his candidacy. But listen to what he has to say about this.
So you could endorse Trump then?
An endorsement.
I don't see that happening.
I don't.
You would never endorse.
Don't see that happening is different than no. Keeps going.
President Trump.
I don't. I think
I love it. I love it. Because first of all, if the left wants to get mad at RFK, this is how they're going to fight. He couldn't even categorically, unequivocally say that he won't endorse Trump. I can't see that. I don't see that happening now. It's not a no. It's not a no.
So you could endorse Trump then?
I don't see that happening.
That
You
wasn't
would
the
never
question.
endorse President Trump.
I don't. I think we have so many differences in style and approach that
True.
that I probably would never end up there.
All right. Well, sir, we appreciate.
First of all, I'm not making fun of RFK. I love it because it's an equivocal answer, because it's a truth. I don't see that happening. Can't see. I can't see that happening. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen. Wait until we see how dirty the DNC does RFK Jr. First of all,
Appreciate your time.
Thank
know
you.
you gotta get
I
out of
like
here.
him.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Krystal. Thank
Yeah,
you.
my pleasure.
I am, and I'll play another clip. I like him, and I love the fact that he couldn't give an unequivocal no. Of course, not hell no. I don't see that happening, but things can happen where I could say, okay, well, I didn't see it happening then. I didn't know that they were going to so dishonestly cheat me out of everything, out of my potentially rightful nomination. Now, Krystal Ball, on the other hand, she is the one who did the town hall with Trump. I gotta play this clip just for observational purposes. The lack of introspection, the degree to which people project and are not self-aware of the projection, to the point where, look, I always ask myself, if I'm about to criticize somebody for something, not whether or not do I think it's true of myself, is somebody else out there going to be able to say, Viva, that is true of yourself? You know, like when I criticize people for starting a tweet with "Let's be clear," I make damn sure that I have not myself started tweets with "Let's be clear" or "Let me be clear." The sheer lack of introspection of Krystal in the attacks on RFK are amazing. Now, I edited this together myself, so she doesn't say it 3 times, but I highlighted it 3 times. But listen to this.
But I think people have shown you where things are
No,
wrong,
no,
but
no.
you don't want to hear it.
Yeah,
Hold
but
on.
you're
But
raising this
I
issue.
don't want to get in a debate with you about this because you've spent your life pulling out this stuff.
I think people have shown you where you're wrong, but I don't want to get into. I don't want to get into it with you. I know you spent your life doing this, and I don't want to get into it with you.
I will tell you, I've listened to hours of interviews with you with an open mind.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not persuaded, but I think people have shown you where things are wrong, but you don't want to hear it. I have not seen that. I have seen study after study that shows the opposite. Listen, I don't want to get bogged down in this because I don't think we're going to see eye to eye here, but I think people have shown you where things are wrong, but you don't want to hear it. But I think.
So anyways, fascinating. It's fascinating. The absolute lack of introspection. I think people have showed you where you're wrong, but you don't want to hear it. Yeah, I've listened to all your stuff. I'm not convinced. Oh, I don't want to get into it with you because you've done it your entire life and you might know more than me, but I don't want to see where I think I'm wrong. But I'm going to accuse you of not wanting to see where you're wrong. Oh, who did? Hold on. Krystal didn't do the town hall. Who did it? Oh, I swear to you, and I swear to you, I thought it was Krystal because I didn't know the woman's name who did it, and I saw Krystal today. It's like, oh, I thought it was her. Yes, Viva blocks free speech. There you go. So tonight we're gonna have a great episode. But before, oh shoot, balls. Hold on 1 second. Hold on just 1 second. Oh, I did forget something. I'm clicking this. This contains a paid promotion like a sponsorship. This stream contains paid promotion like a product placement, sponsorship, or endorsement. I've clicked on it. I am refreshing. Good. And now I'm going to the sponsorship. Field of Greens, people. Last week, we got another sponsor, Genucel Makeup, which I'm not into makeup, but it's a great product with a great story. Tonight's sponsor is one of the ones that I actually use. EnviroCleanse, the air filtration, I use. Field of Greens, I use. A little known fact, people. I went to McDonald's today, not for me. For the kids wanted to go to McDonald's. You know, they have decent stuff there. The brownness, the overall beigeness of the food that comes out of McDonald's, it's a little known fact. You're supposed to have 5 to 7 servings of raw fruits and vegetables every day because they've got nutrients, they've got fibers, they've got antioxidant power, super mega. You know, most people don't do that. I happen to know that I have more than 5 to 7 servings of raw fruits and vegetables a day, sometimes way too much, actually. And I will not give you the TMI as to what happens when you eat an entire container of arugula because you can't control yourself. For those who don't, or who have a bad habit in the afternoon of sucking down a disgusting chemical-filled Diet Coke or Red Bull crap, 1 spoonful of Field of Greens. It's powdered greens. It's not a supplement. It's not an extract. It is desiccated. It's like pulverized beef jerky of the vegetable way. Where's my container? That's not in here. Oh, camera, stay here. It's pulverized vegetables. One spoonful contains 1 serving of fruits and vegetables. It's made in America, USDA organic approved. It's good stuff. It actually tastes good, mildly sweet. It looks like swamp water when you're drinking it, but swamp water looks like swamp water because it's full of nutrients. 1 spoonful twice a day. Are we on the screen? We are on the screen. And it's amazing. USDA organic, 1 spoonful has all of the power antioxidants of fruits and vegetables and all that great stuff. If you go to fieldofgreens.com, promo code VIVA, 15% off your order. Healthy habits and healthier habits to get into. That is fieldofgreens.com. Promo code VIVA. Okay, thank you. The link is in there if anybody wants to go and get their Field of Greens. It's good stuff. So now what else was I saying? Until Barnes gets here. Hold on, where is Barnes? Where's Barnes? I sent him the link. Okay, he should be coming here anytime soon. I had another good video. Oh, okay, so by the way, no medical advice, no election fortification advice, no legal advice. What was I about to say? Super chats, Rumble rants. StreamYard has done something where it's automatically starring the Rumble rants, and so I don't see them until I notice they're starred. These wonderful things here, for anybody who chooses to support the channel, Bear in mind, YouTube takes 30% of these super chats. If you want to support us, you can go to Rumble, and they have the equivalent called Rumble Rants. And for the rest of the year, Rumble is taking 0% of that. They ordinarily take 20%. So even when they take their cut, it's better for the creator, better for the platform. It's a platform that supports free speech. Best way to support us, if you so inclined, go to vivabarneslaw.locals.com. $7 a month, $70 a year. And you get tons of exclusive content. The community is massive. It's wonderful. There are a lot of supporters. You can be a member without being a supporter, and you get access to tons of stuff. If you have an annual subscription, you will notice that you have gotten access to a documentary that I directed, edited, and published of Robert Barnes giving me the brief history of Chattanooga. Over the course of a day, we went to visit his birth house. As we were shooting on site, an individual comes out of the house and says in a deep Tennessee accent, "May I ask what you're doing here?" Anyway, the documentary is great, but you can go support us on vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Here, do you really think RFK Jr. has a shot against Biden and the Dem establishment? No, I do not. But I'll tell you this. What's amazing about that crystal ball interview is that he says, look, I believe the environment is an existential crisis. I disagree with him on that. And he says, I think it's an existential crisis, but I don't expect other people to agree with me on that. His reasoning, we're going to get into it a bit more with Barnes, as to I think his reasoning is fundamentally flawed, and it drives me nuts that, we rely on the experts who tell us the world is going to end, but we see how the experts just told us how the world was going to end with COVID and effed everybody. But he says, look, you don't even have to agree with me. But when it comes to the environment, the policies that I'm going to espouse are going to be ones that everybody should agree with, regardless of whether or not you think the Earth is going to end in 12 years. And his answer is amazing. It's not going to be the divisive globalist issue it is now. It's going to be, we want clean waters. We want a beautiful environment. We want to preserve the environment for our children. And everyone's going to be on board. And I'm not going to run around saying the Earth is going to end in 12 years unless we reduce our carbon emissions to 0% in a country that contributes 1.5%. I'm talking about Canada. All right. And that's it. One more here before Barnes gets in. This lady obviously skimped on speechwriters. Okay. And I'll get to the Rumble rants afterwards. Bring it on the Barnes. 3, 2, 1. Boom. Shakalaka, sir. How goes the battle?
Good.
You still look young like a baby, Robert, from the haircut.
Exactly. That's the net effect of it.
What book do you have over your shoulder?
The Strange Laws of Old England. So, for example, it was not illegal to sign into a hotel with a fake name unless you were there for lovemaking. Then that was a crime under Old England. So it's a range of interesting reminder of, as we go through some of these crazy cases, that is not new to the law, sadly. There's a long history of crazy laws and crazy cases and crazy courts in our past.
Robert, well, when we get to the roadside baptism, I mean, we're talking about crazy cases here.
By the way, guess where did that roadside baptism take place?
Well, son of a bee sting. I had the article up. I want to say Chattanooga.
Yes.
Damn it! I read the article. I was reading on it. I didn't know.
That's Hamilton County, Tennessee, right where we were, where people could see a documentary up on mini biography documentary up on our first Content Plus production. Some people were asking what that's about. That's for when we do special projects. We need a little bit of supplemental revenue to make those sustainable. So for those that annual subscribers get it for free, but everybody else gets it, can just pay $9.99 to help support those, to do more live events, etc. But it's a personal biographical tour of my hometown, which will feature in one of the last cases we'll discuss today, Chattanooga, Tennessee. To me, I think that person should have given that deputy a reward, not a lawsuit, for giving them a little baptism.
We're going to get, just so everybody knows, mull this over until we get to it. It was a choice between going to jail for marijuana possession or baptism in a river. I mean, for goodness sake, it's just like going for a night swim. I would have done it for fun.
Yeah.
Okay, Robert. So, I mean, look, the list, do you want to go through it, or should I go through it real quick?
So the bonus off the top that we have for tonight is Donald Trump's Truth Organization sues the Washington Post. That's one of the bonus cases for tonight. The 12 top topics. In chronological order for those that are following for the show. Up first will be the Durham Report. Second will be the RFK vaccine debate with Krystal, not so crystal ball. This third up, Supreme Court, Section 230, and how it was not actually addressed. COVID, a great COVID concurring opinion by Justice Gorsuch. The Warhol case that we talked about before now has reached a conclusion. The IRS case that we talked about before has sadly reached conclusion, but some promising concurring opinions from a certain new justice known as Justice Jackson with Justice Gorsuch along the lines that some of us predicted she might not be all bad on some cases. The TikTok ban in Montana goes to court. The Kari Lake election contest, the case voted number 1 on our locals board, will be up number 5 in our order of chronology tonight. Judicial reform challenged on election spending issues in Illinois. We got the traffic stop baptism. We got Fireball. That lawsuit that we talked about before has now reached the motion to dismiss and decision stage. Cryptocurrencies and central bank digital currencies. Texas passing its own laws. Congress trying to sneak peek at control over cryptos and maybe get a little central bank digital currency in through the back door. Robert Kennedy was down at the Bitcoin conference talking about this week that topic as well. That's topics 9 and 10. 11, when do legislators have privilege from lawsuits? That went up to the 5th Circuit. And last but not least, the New York charities are trying to spy on you and trying to share information illicitly, which has led to a First Amendment lawsuit in federal court in New York.
Well, and number 1, which we're going to do here before we run over to Rumble exclusively, the Durham Report. Now, Robert, so let's start with the Durham Report. I tweeted out your 90-minute analysis, which is the most thorough analysis you're going to get. I mean, I talked about it last week, and it's like, for those who are following it from the beginning, it shows you nothing new, but the point that you made in your analysis is quite striking in that the scope of this report, the scope of Durham's investigation could have, should have, or arguably needed to include any and all players who might have done something to interfere with the election, which in theory might have, should have also included the Clinton campaign. And the scope of his mandate was quite broad, but he seems to have limited it himself to dealing with a number of key issues that allowed him to come to some very milquetoast findings, even though the facts behind them are damning, but ignore the Clinton campaign, the DNC altogether, as to their involvement in potential election interference. My first question, I think you answered it, just going to ask it again now. Durham did have the authority to recommend criminal prosecution?
Beyond that, I mean, so his powers by the Attorney General Barr, pursuant to the Special Counsel statute and internal regulations, was that he was given all the power of the Justice Department itself as to certain subject matters. And that subject matter was pretty broad. It was, in terms of people, there was no limitation. It said any entity, individual, person, period. So no limitation there. The only limitation was by subject matter. And the only subject matter limitation was that it had to be connected to the intelligence community and law enforcement as it concerned the 2016 presidential election. He then voluntarily, radically restricted and self-imposed restraints on himself. And by the way, he was given full investigative power, full indictment power, and the investigative power included full power to use subpoenas, grand juries, you name it, immunities. He had all of those powers. He had all the powers of the Justice Department as it concerned anybody that had any tie to intelligence, law enforcement, or the 2016 presidential election. What he chose to do was voluntarily say that if Huber had investigated it before for Attorney General Sessions, he wasn't going to look at it. That if Robert Mueller looked at it, even though the Barr authorization includes the right to look at Mueller, he says because Mueller looked at it, he won't look at it. And so that he ignored anything that Mueller's team, including Andrew Weissman, did for the most part. So that was his first limitation, was by scope, by subject matter. His second one was by tools and methods. He chose not to use many search warrants, 7 search warrants. Contrast that to Mueller. Contrast that to others. He chose he doesn't disclose him giving immunity to anybody. So he didn't use one of the greatest powers he had. He chose not to utilize at all. His indictment power, he rarely utilized. Never went up. Now, we talked about all the way back at almost a month after he was appointed, my skepticism that Durham would do anything of significance. And I got some blowback from people in the community who said, well, when are you going to apologize, Barnes, when Durham indicts Comey? Well, you can keep waiting on that, folks. He's now issued his report. And it's all done. He didn't indict anyone of consequence, even though his report details what to me is obvious crimes. What's interesting is not only did he not use the power of immunity, the power of indictment, the power of grand jury subpoenas. For example, James Comey, it appears Andrew McCabe, it appears, according to his own report, to some degree, Lisa Page, it appears. It also appears Christopher Steele and a bunch of those people. It appears Miss Food and a bunch of the people that were and Halper, that were the operatives, the gray space operator, that a bunch of these people did not voluntarily sit down to an interview, so he did nothing. He didn't even subpoena them to demand they interview them.
And just
at least of all offer immunity.
Bearing in mind that Bannon might go to jail for his contempt of a subpoena or contempt of Congress, and well, at least you avoid that risk by just not subpoenaing anybody. Okay, sorry.
Exactly. And some people he did subpoena, asserted attorney-client privilege, executive privilege, other privilege. He didn't even challenge it in 95% of the time. So this was an investigation that was more cover-up than investigation. So the goal was to come to terms with what Barr wanted was to come to terms with how bad the Russiagate inquiry was, but to come up with scapegoats that would be low level, that would be mostly outsiders. He indicted more people outside the government than inside the government. He indicted very few people in general. And that would not call for either indictments of high-ranking officials or institutional reform. And that's what I predicted the Durham report, what Durham would do, and that's exactly what Durham did do.
One quick question. So when you say that he had all of the power of the Justice Department, that it would be not only to recommend indictments, he could have brought indictments himself.
Yeah. In fact, the memorandum is just to explain why he did or didn't indict certain people. And most of that is likely in the confidential section of the report, not the public section of the report. The public, but you can tell from the public by how he voluntarily chose to limit his scope of what he would subject matter of his inquiry. Then second, voluntarily chose to restrain what tools he used in the Justice Department. That was going to guide and govern his outcomes anyway. But third, he makes clear that he's constantly interpreting the facts in a light most favorable to the FBI. What he concludes, because my view his motivation was to come to a conclusion that did not call for either high-ranking indictments or institutional reform, was that this was gross negligence based on confirmation bias of the political prejudice of a few people. And that not that the barrel was bad, but just a few apples were. And that those apples weren't criminally bad, they were just grossly negligent. And that's exactly what I predicted he would do, and that's exactly what he did do. Now, that doesn't change the shocking revelation still in the report in terms of that this proves beyond any shadow of a doubt what some of us said from the very beginning, which was Russiagate is the most embarrassingly ridiculous allegation ever made in the history of the Justice Department or mainstream media against a presidential candidate. Mueller never should have had a job. That never should have been an assignment. That it's
30 million, 33 million it cost, but they recouped some fines, so it paid for itself.
Yeah. I mean, it was utterly ludicrous. I mean, Rosenstein has no excuse. He should be retroactively impeached. I mean, for him to, he knew that this case was entirely fake. And, Ann Coulter should issue an apology for ever recommending Attorney General Sessions to be Attorney General Sessions, because he's the one who recommended Rosenstein. Rosenstein was a complete joke. I knew that from his days at the tax division. So there was absolutely what the Durham report concludes beyond any shadow of a doubt is that there was absolutely no merit whatsoever ever to Russiagate of any kind, any way, at any time. And they had to go to extraordinary lengths of violating their own internal rules and procedures, ignoring their own internal analysts and experts, then refusing to employ their own required methodologies and modus operandi for investigative techniques in order to make these outrageous claims and seize these extraordinary powers. That's not gross negligence. That's deliberate efforts to seditiously undermine the election of 20 to interfere. As to his credit, Robert Kennedy got a lot of criticism because back in 2017, he was open to the possibilities of Russiagate. Now, he had very few tweets on that. Michael Tracy was being overly critical of him. Mm-hmm. But what is Robert Kennedy Jr., as he explained, we'll get into the later topic in his debate with Krystal Ball, he said he's happy to change his mind if people show him evidence that shows why he's wrong. Well, what does he do after the Durham report comes out? He goes on Dave Smith. Dave, you still owe us a sidebar appearance. Got to show up, Dave. Dave's a great guy. Dave sat down with him on his show, and what does Robert Kennedy say? He agrees with the Durham Report. He calls it a shocking expose of extraordinary deep state misconduct and malfeasance. That Russiagate was a complete crock, and that it was an embarrassing election interference.
Media is not really talking about the Durham.
I'm sorry, I can't stop it. Sorry, Robert. I'll play this after you're done. Oh,
ready?
Sorry about that. I sorry.
The Democrats don't like, and the mainstream media is not really talking about the Durham Report. But for me, because I've been concerned for so many years about, about the CIA's illegal propagandizing American people, which it's not legally allowed to do.
Is it just going in and out on my end, or is that your end?
Say it again.
It seems to be going in and out.
Okay, I'll share the clip after. He talks.
But basically, he comes out and he says that this is the CIA and the deep state interfering in our elections. So credit to him for it. But that's how compelling and persuasive the Durham Report is. Even someone who is open to the idea that Russiagate was real reverses course entirely because he remains open-minded as a human being. But it shows how powerful and persuasive it is as to that aspect. That there was never any evidence for it. That the top analyst for the CIA said there was no basis for it. The top analyst of Russia, your Jack Ryan types at the FBI, said there was no basis for it. At the director of at the National Security Agency said there was no basis for it. At the director of national intelligence said no base. So the actual analyst said it was nonsense. But what did Brennan and Clapper and Comey do? They went over and talked to Obama and Biden and Susan Rice and Sally Yates and said, let's conspire to screw the president. And they disguised it. They laundered it through using multiple levels of laundering. They disguised it as a national security investigation. That was their effort to try to derail the president's election, to illicitly spy and surveil it, to then go on and try to undermine it with a de facto coup of foreign affairs policy for more than 2 years. And so that's the undisputable, undeniable, ultimate conclusion from it. Now, what was shocking new news in it is two things. I mean, well, kind of shocking. I kind of said so at the time is probable, but it was still striking to see it in plain black and white writing. The FBI had multiple offices who had received independent reports of extraordinary and extensive and expansive criminality by the Clinton campaign, going beyond the Clinton email scandal, but including other issues of bribery involving the Clinton Foundation and a bunch of foreign individuals who said that the Clinton campaign was trying to raise money from foreign sources directly and deliberately. And what did they do? The FBI, rather than investigating, they shut down those investigations. They harassed any agent that tried to pursue those investigations, and they tipped off Hillary Clinton that those investigations and whistleblowers even existed in the first place as a defensive advisement. So the FBI basically was the personal tool of the Clinton campaign and the personal hostile adverse entity to Trump in the 2016 campaign and afterwards for the entire term pretty much of his presidency. It details that over and over again, high-ranking FBI officials can't remember or directly contradict things that are in their own notes, in their own emails, in their own correspondence. All these people, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, James Baker, James Comey, there is overwhelming evidence in the report itself that they should have been indicted. They just choose not to indict them by giving them the benefit of the doubt as to their bad memory.
Can the Republicans decide to find a way to indict them after this?
Yeah, I mean, the statute of limitations is not his Durham's decision is not binding on any future prosecution. Only the statute of limitations is limiting, but statute of limitations in many of these cases will run out before 2025. Maybe that's why Durham took so long. The other aspect of it, though, that's shocking is the Clinton campaign high-ranking people went in and lied directly to the Durham investigators. And that's its own basis of criminal prosecution. It is apparent to me that Jake Sullivan, Victoria Nuland, two high-ranking officials in the Clinton administration and the Biden administration, lied to the Durham team. It is also clear that John Podesta lied to the Durham team. It is obvious that Palmieri and Robbie Mook and Hillary Clinton lied to the Durham team. They all committed overt acts of obstruction and perjury because they made claims that were, as the Durham Report details, were patently false and are rebutted directly by plain evidence, including their own emails in certain cases. Because what the other aspect that it confirms is that Russiagate was not only a deep state plot, which he tries to hide. You have to figure that out by reading between the lines. He hides the identity of Halper. He hides the identity of Miss Food or whoever that is, or whoever that aggregate person is. Never been explained. But when you figure out it's always the legal attaché in London and the legal attaché in Rome, and you got Aussie spies involved and MI6 spies involved, and it's the National Security Division at the FBI, it's the Counterintelligence Unit at the FBI, the National Security Division at the Justice Department. It's the head of the CIA. It's guys like Clapper. It's guys like Brennan. When you understand that's who's running this, you understand this is a deep state plot in coordination with the Clinton campaign that secretly hid its involvement. And by the way, this might explain why Elias was pushed out. Perkins Coie clearly lied to the world. And in my view, their lead partners deliberately perjured themselves and obstructed justice when they lied to the Durham committee. And he refused to indict them too, because he's ballless. But it's clear Mark Elias committed some more. It's clear Mark Elias has been a money launderer and a criminal for most of his days as a Democratic Party apparatchik. But there's more evidence that he lied to the Durham committee as well, perjured and committed obstruction of justice, because they were all obsessed with derailing the Durham inquiry from exposing that this was also a Hillary Clinton orchestrated plot, in which he engaged in money laundering and campaign finance election fraud in order to disguise and hide her role. But she didn't stop there. She then perjured key people, perjured themselves and obstructed justice, and made false statements to the FBI in the course of the Durham investigation to try to cover up their complicity and culpability in the fraud, fake hoax that was Russiagate.
I had one more question, Robert. Oh, well, you probably answered it, but I'm just going to have to ask it like specifically. Durham concluded there was not an iota of evidence to support any of the allegations in the Steele dossier. The Steele dossier was the dossier that was funded by the DNC and the Clinton campaign. Funded by them, they lied about it. They got that $8,000 fine, and the DNC got $100 and some odd $1,000 fine because they mislabeled financing the Steele dossier, which they financed. They then, through their lawyer, it was Sussman.
Sussman was just one of them. I mean, they had multiple people planting and laundering false intel and information through law enforcement and intelligence agencies.
And so,
as I explained in more detail in the podcast version that's available at vivabarneslaw.locals.com, you dig in. This was really a deep state plot that started in March, not in July. And the Clinton campaign just came fully on board in May, and they were coordinating with the deep state allies, but Durham doesn't want to focus on the deep state aspect, so he instead highlights the political corruptibility of high-ranking agents and the Clinton campaign role, both of which are significant and consequential, but by no means were the lead elements involved. It's not a coincidence certain people keep showing up whose names are not named.
Well, and just to highlight this is that Clinton campaign financed the Steele dossier, lied about it. Their counsel slipped it to the FBI. The FBI then leaked it to Yahoo News. FBI relied on Yahoo News to get those unlawful spy warrant, FISA warrant renewals against Carter Page. Durham concludes there was not an iota of evidence to support any of this. It was gross confirmation bias. It ought never have been initiated as a full investigation in the first place. What the hell was Mueller doing for 3 years investigating and prosecuting people in virtue of an investigation which ought never have been started because it was so frivolous to begin with? What was Mueller doing for 3 years?
It was just extending the cover-up and continuing the coup d'etat against the elected president of the United States, particularly as a certain policy. That was clear from day one. That's this is where people like Steve Bannon got played like a violin. He got played by people like Mueller. He got played, and this is where Sessions was a weak link. Ann Coulter doesn't want to admit that, but she's still bitter at Trump for his treatment of Sessions. Well, Sessions screwed up. Says Sessions was he was a denier about the truth of the deep state. And so you could call him a deep state denier. People want to use phrases like election denier. Well, I like phrases like fraud denier and phrases like deep state denier.
How about just criminals? I mean, they are unindicted criminals.
Yes, that's exactly right. So there should be institutional reform. There's been some calls for it from the effect of the Durham Report. Durham Report is a great report for understanding how the deep state really operates, but you do need to read between the lines to figure that out. It tells you how much Christopher Steele's text, like there was no Russian source. There never was. There was no source in Russia at all. The so-called Russian source was a CIA recruit from Russia who had come over in Russia back in the late 1990s. Right, he had no meaningful ties to Russia at all. We would just make up stories that he was told to make up. And the members of the board have watched Taylor of Panama. I recommend both the book and the movie. Also, the book and the movie by Graham Greene, Our Man in Havana. That is exactly how I said from day one that if you watch those two movies, it will predict to you what happened with the Steele dossier. That the Steele dossier was totally faked. And that it was just made up by rumors by random people sitting in a bar just making stuff up. That's exactly what it was. People are like, that can't be true. Our intelligence agencies don't operate that way. I remember debating all these quasi-hack lawyers from Lawfare and elsewhere online saying that they didn't follow FISA, that they're like, no, you don't understand how hard it is, Barnes, to get a FISA warrant. No, that's to meet a high standard of probable hogwash. Now we all know they lied. They all lie. All those people should be embarrassed. All those journalists who won Pulitzer Prizes should be humiliated. Dan Abrams, hey, you can send me your apology next week, Dan. Dan was sitting there debating me back when I was writing for Law and Crime, his publication, and about Russiagate early on, because I wrote, people can look it up in case Barnes is making it up. I wrote in January of 2017 about this, February of 2017, again March of 2017. And Dan Abrams was agitated because he was like, you don't understand, this Alpha Bank story is a real big story. We got to figure this story out. That dumb bastard fell for that crap. So it's all these people, everybody who ever vouched for Russiagate is a joke in terms of if you're a journalist, if you're a lawyer, if you're one of these high profile, you pretended to use your expertise to vouch for it, then you're a crock. You're an embarrassment. And that's what it should be. And that's why the media ran and hid from the Durham Report, because it shows what an utter crock they are, that Our Man in Havana is still alive and real today. That's 9 times out of 10 what our great intelligence officers are gathering. It's just crap. I was like, I've been, reading about various famous spies recently because of the Durham Report, and to do some hush-hushes on people like the Cambridge Five, on the famous Russian spies. What's funny is the KGB ignored 90% of what the Cambridge Five gave them because it didn't fit their own confirmation bias. So they didn't even translate it. The Stalin was so paranoid, and the KGB was so, they wouldn't believe anything that disagreed with their assumptions and beliefs. This is who these people are. Our intelligence agencies are a crock. They're a waste of space. They're a waste of time. We would be better off if we did what President John Kennedy said, what Robert Francis Kennedy Jr. just said, time to disperse them to the wind.
All right, let's get over to Rumble here, but I'm gonna go to Rumble. We're gonna do the Rumble rants before I go to Rumble exclusively. Do you think January 6th?
I mean, that question answers itself, doesn't it? But if you have any doubts about it, watch the first ever Hush Hush at vivabarneslaw.locals.com, which was published just a week after January 6th.
And it depends what everyone means by false flag. It happened. It was facilitated by.
Well, that's what a false flag is. False flag is a pirate, puts up, makes you think he's with you. He puts up your flag of your country on your ship, and then when he gets real close, takes it down, puts up the Jolly Roger. Hence, false flag. Mm-hmm. Those pirates really boarded those ships and really stole the loot, but they just weren't actually under the British flag like their Spanish flag or whatever flag it was they were pretending to raise. That's exactly what January 6th was from beginning to end.
Okay, I'm going to read these before we go over to Rumble exclusively. Neeboop said Barnes knows homos. I don't know what that means. Ask him how this is the leverage. Barnes, what are your thoughts on info on Bill Gates, Epstein, and Melina Antonova, the Russian bridge player? Okay, hold on.
Bill Gates likes young women. And Epstein used it against him. Shock, shock.
Got Arkansas crime attorney just ordered The Strange Laws of Old England hardcover, only $14.90 on Amazon. Britt Cormier, did you see Krystal Ball try to go head-to-head with RFK Jr. after she said, I do not want to get bogged down? She went on to accuse him of being too entrenched. Got here late. Sorry, we're going to cover it more, but that's what the intro videos were. Arkansas crime attorney. Barnes, what do you think of Marco Polo report on Biden family? Well, I'm going to have to get... Marco Polo's supposed to come on as well. What did I just do here? Escape that. I just did something. Oh, son of a bee sting. Arkansas crime attorney. What do you think of that? Okay, we got retired geek Jimmy Dore commented how Krystal Ball is good friends with Marianne Williamson, so it's no wonder she treated RFK Jr. that way. I don't know what that means. A Warhol for $100 Rumble rant says, loved the tour of Chattanooga. Have family friends there. Thank you very much. A wall for Nike 7. Love RFK. Do we think he is naive to the tactics of the DNC, or is he prepared? I think he knows what's coming. It's just a question of how he's going to respond when it happens. Jane Catherine Berry 1. Cheryl, no, even his family won't support him. He should be running for governor of California. Okay. And have you thought about having Michael Malice as a guest? You could discuss his various books like The White Pill, Dead Reader, The New Right, etc. Would make for a great discussion. I would love to have Michael Malice.
He's been invited, but he's too busy.
I don't
he's always busy.
I don't want to. I don't want to get neurotic.
What's up with that little Michael?
I don't want to get neurotic.
He's too busy. He's an anarchist. He's running around sparking anarchy around the world.
I just wonder if I did something that he doesn't like me. That's what I'm wondering.
No. He said he's got a bunch of stuff he's doing, which is fun. That's true for a bunch of people. We've invited tons of people, and everybody's got a busy schedule.
Well,
so, no problem.
Dave
I'm just
Smith.
giving Mike a hard time.
I'm gonna DM Smith. He's got to come. He's got to get.
You can't guilt him into appearing. You can't shame him into appearing. I'm trying to find out people should figure out what's Michael Malice's weak link to get him on the sidebar.
All right, now we're going over to Rumble.
The regular ones don't work.
Mosey on over to Rumble, ending on YouTube in 3, 2,